How is it going, my man? Patrick James here, and welcome to another video. Let's talk about something very interesting today. I call it the top 10 things to never do in any conversation, or else you're gonna kill your charisma. Let's get into it. Number 1, thou shalt not be negative, all right? The only people that are attracted to negativity are negative people, but everybody, even the negative ones, are attracted to positivity. So don't talk about your dead dog. Don't talk about how sick you were last week. Don't talk about your opinions on ISIS. Don't talk about how much you hate Donald Trump. Don't talk about anything negative, okay? Stick to the positive topics, and I guarantee you're gonna see better results. You're gonna be more charismatic, and you're going to be more magnetic to the world around you. Number 2, thou shalt not seek reactions from anybody that you talk to. Here's what I mean. Imagine a good stand-up comedian. Now, does the stand-up comedian stand there on the stage, tell a great joke, and then look at people in the audience and laugh at his own joke in hopes that other people will catch on and start laughing too? Or does he drop the line, look off into the distance, and wait for people to stop laughing before they even start? That is an example of assuming all positive things, not seeking the reaction, because here's the thing. Remember this statement. Tattoo it to the inside of your prefrontal cortex. When people can sense that we want something from them, they don't want to give it to us. So if you're seeking positive reactions, they won't give them to you, okay? So say something for yourself, assume that everybody's gonna take it in a positive direction, and don't ever look for that reaction. Number 3, thou shalt not censor yourself just to not offend anybody else. Now, if you're changing yourself to appease other people, that is called being a people pleaser. I used to do this all the time when I was in high school, when I was in college. I see other guys do it all the time. When I'm around a girl, or when I used to be around a girl that I was attracted to, or even like a business partner that I really wanted to work with, I would censor my own language just so I wouldn't repel them away from me. I would not talk about different topics like sex or things that interested me. I would try to keep it strictly professional, all right? Now that is a trap, because when you're changing yourself, you're not being yourself, and other people are gonna feel like you're fake. So keep in mind a guy who's a very famous entrepreneur. That guy's name is Gary Vaynerchuk. That guy gives so many speeches at professional events, yet he says the F word in every other fucking sentence, and it comes across as charismatic because he doesn't give a fuck about the reactions. He says what he wants because it adds more emphasis to his points, and it's part of his personality. So don't censor yourself, because at the end of the day, if you're censoring yourself just to not offend somebody, that means that you are playing not to lose instead of playing to win, and you should always play to win. Number 4, thou shalt not ever go into interview mode, all right? So when you meet someone at a bar, like a girl, or if you meet someone at a networking event, like a potential business partner, don't ever go into the typical boring questions that they already have pre-planned answers for. For example, how many times have you entered a conversation and with someone that you just met, and the questions went something like this: what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do? What'd you major in college, all right? And it goes down that same boring, typical path. Don't be that guy. Talk about things that you're actually interested in that moment. Maybe tell an interesting story that just happened to you, or maybe make an observation that you find interesting about the environment that you're currently in, all right? Avoid interview mode, and if you just have a good vibing conversation, all that stuff is gonna come out naturally, all right? Number 5, avoid investing way too much into the conversation, especially if you're investing more than the other person. Any good conversation with two people that have rapport with each other, especially a man and a woman, should be a give and take. Now, that said, there is one caveat. If you're talking to somebody that you just approached off the street, or if you go up to somebody at a networking event and you just started talking to them, you should expect to be able to carry the conversation for at least the first minute or two until they break out of their shell, until you entice them enough to invest into the conversation. But other than that, if you're telling all these stories about yourself and you're asking all the questions and this person's nodding their head and giving one-word answers, then they're investing a lot less than you into the conversation, and they're not gonna value it as much as you would. So make sure that any conversation you have is a give and take. Number 6, thou shalt avoid getting too deep too early. Think about the stereotypical cool guy like Fonzie or Ryan Gosling from Crazy Stupid Love, or any cool guy. Is he ever super serious right off the bat, right when he starts talking to somebody? Or is he light? Is he nonchalant? Is he cracking jokes? All right. One example I like to think of like this is Will Smith or Russell Brand. If you watch any of their conversations that they have with anybody, even in interviews, they're always keeping it at a surface level, okay? If this is the first person you've met somebody and they're getting really deep into the conversation, you can go with the flow, but be sure to like bring it back up. It's very charismatic if you're keeping it positive, light, and nonchalant by cracking a joke to bring the vibe of the conversation back to a place of playfulness and positivity and charisma. Number 7, thou shalt not show too much interest too early. Remember this statement: outcome dependence kills. Like we said, when someone can sense that you want something from them, they don't want to give it to you. That's just human nature. That's just the way it is. Especially if they can sense that you have an agenda. If you're not really being real with them in that moment and you're pushing for some outcome, they don't want to give it to you. So imagine like a car salesman. If you walked onto a cars lot and you were just browsing around, you're just checking out the cool cars on the lot. If a salesperson came up to you and was like, hey, you want to buy a car? Let's buy a car. Let's close this deal. That car looks perfect for you. Well, you can tell that he's not talking to you because he wants to vibe with you, build rapport with you, or even befriend you. Therefore, you won't trust him because you can sense that he's pushing for a certain outcome. So keep it light, keep it nonchalant, be carefree, go with the flow of the conversation, and don't be pushing for any outcome because outcome dependence kills. Number 8. Thou shalt not talk about yourself too much. Now, if you've ever read Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, then you know everybody's favorite topic is themselves. So, always be trying to bring the topic of conversation back to the person that you're talking about, because if you're talking about yourself all the time, they're gonna easily start tuning you out. But if you somehow are able to reframe the conversation and bring it back to, how did you feel about that? Can you relate to that story? What do you think about that story? Have you ever experienced anything like that? Then they're gonna wanna talk about themselves. And it's gonna be a very good conversation because now you're enticing them to start investing to the conversation, which they will gladly oblige because they're talking about themselves. So thou shalt not talk about yourself too much. Number 9. Thou shalt not ever qualify yourself. And another word for qualify is sell yourself. So back to the car salesman example. Who's the buyer in the interaction? Who's qualifying themselves, all right? If you have a car salesman who's very pushy, then he's gonna come up to you and he's gonna try to sell this car to you. He's gonna try to sell this car to you. And you as the buyer are thinking, okay, well, is that car really qualified to be in my life? Is that car really good enough for me? Why do I need that car? Tell me why I need that car. And this is the same underlying context of almost every conversation, especially if you're talking to a new girl in any social environment. So never qualify yourself, never sell yourself. Be the buyer rather than the seller. Now that seller could easily reframe it around. If you go onto a very fancy car lot, they're gonna be qualifying you to see if you're even worth their time trying to even sell to you. So in that case, he's qualifying the buyer. So who are you gonna be? Are you going to be the guy seeing if the other person meets your qualities and your standards for who you wanna talk to and who you wanna bring into your life? Or are you gonna try to sell yourself to other people? In reality, you should just frame everybody as your equal, so therefore, nobody's qualifying to anybody and you already have that underlying sense of rapport, but that's another video. And the last one, number 10, thou shalt not be in your own head. Okay? Have you ever heard that someone has great presence? Well, that was because they were actually present to the current moment. Think about it like this. If you were talking to somebody and half the time you're thinking about what you should say next, or you're waiting for them to stop so you can continue on with your story, well, you're not very present. And if you're doing that about half the time, then only 50% of the time you were actually present into the conversation and you will actually feel distant to them. They'll actually feel that. So don't ever try to plan a conversation. Don't ever dwell on a conversation that happened in the past that didn't go well, or even if it did go well, don't dwell on that. Be in the current moment, act and react, and go with the flow of the current conversation in this moment. And that said, if you avoid any of these 10 thou shalt nots, then you will be well off, my friend. Now, if you like this video, if you're new to the movement, if you are new to the tribe, like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.
And here's to all the young believers. You know, the ones that don't believe us. Baby, play it for your ex too. And all the kids around my table yelling F you.